Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Dharma Helper and this is DH Reviews. This is my Season 1 Episode 7 review of Scorpion. If you missed any of my previous Scorpion reviews, there will be a link in the description of this video as well as an annotation behind me on the screen. You can click either of those and that'll take you right to the Scorpion playlist that has all of my Scorpion videos in it. Also, earlier this week, I put out my Gotham Season 1 Episode 7 review and my Constantine Season 1 Episode 2 review, and you can click the link in the description of this video to either of those playlists and get caught up on those reviews as well. With that being said, Season 1 Episode 7 of Scorpion was called Father's Day, and the main story of this episode was the team was hired to investigate how a group of people broke out of a high-tech prison. And over the course of their investigation, they find out that the breakout was engineered by the Russian mafia or some kind of Russian outfit, and they had essentially kidnapped this borderline genius who had wrote a code that changed the results of ballots, voting ballots, an instant and a second before they hit the servers or whatever it was. And they figure out that they're trying to repurpose that code into allowing them to use it on the stock market and make a lot of money on the stock market. And then over the course of the episode, we find out that this borderline genius was actually manipulating these Russian guys and planning to betray them and say that he was kidnapped and take all the money for himself once he got rescued, because he'd been leaving like breadcrumbs and stuff for them to follow and try to rescue him. And the sort of side story, the companion story for this episode, was Paige's ex-husband or ex-boyfriend, who is Ralph's father, sort of comes back into the picture, and the team has to wrestle with how they are going to protect Ralph and respect Paige's privacy. And so Walter and Toby and Sylvester sort of become overprotective in this episode towards Ralph and towards Paige, and they investigate Ralph's father. And it's the theme of the episode is sort of to deal with father figures and stuff, and so Paige has to sort of wrestle with how she's going to break the news to Ralph and all this stuff going on with Paige's ex-husband or ex-boyfriend, who's Ralph's father, and that sort of adds the human touch to the episode and sort of progresses the team in some interesting ways. And that's the story of the episode. So let's talk about the characters of the episode, and let's talk about Walter to begin with. Walter is one of the three members of the team who gets really overprotective. Walter and Toby and Sylvester really get overprotective of Ralph, and Paige tells them, don't look into it. Just let me handle Ralph's father, and don't, overprotective. Don't investigate him or anything like that. And Toby and Walter ignore that advice, and they sort of investigate Ralph's father and figure out all this stuff about him. And it was nice to see that Walter is really invested in Ralph and protective and loving of Ralph. And it was funny to kind of see his way of dealing with that. Again, because, these geniuses, they don't have that EQ. So in Walter's mind, he's doing the best that he can to protect Ralph and to shelter Ralph. But it's not necessarily the most delicate way of handling things, covertly investigating this guy and ignoring Paige's advice and stuff like that. And in terms of the theme of the episode of father figures, again, we get a little bit of a peek behind the father figure relationship that Cabe has with Walter in a flashback, and sort of after what we saw in the pilot episode where Walter gets caught, we see that relationship between Cabe and Walter developing in the past, and how close they were, and how Cabe had protected and sheltered Walter, and really worked to understand him and worked to nurture his gifts in a way that his real father didn't or couldn't quite manage. And so that father figure relationship that we got sort of drove home the pain and the betrayal of that whole thing with the Baghdad bombings or code that got used in an incorrect way. And so we got a little bit more of an idea and the rationale behind why Walter is so upset with Cabe. And I liked seeing that, and I liked that we got to see that Cabe really worked very hard to nurture Walter and to, teach him stuff like self-defense, and took him under his wing. And we haven't seen so far anything about why Cabe did that. Oh, my theory, right? We haven't seen anything from Cabe's daughter yet, and it seems to me, just from looking at the photo and looking at what Cabe looks like talking to Walter, it seems to me that was after his daughter had passed away. So for all of the father figure stuff that Cabe was to Walter was the son or the child that would give Cabe a second chance at being a father. And so I think for him, that betrayal of the Baghdad situation really hit home just as much as it did for Walter, because that was the second child that he's lost. And if that theory sort of comes true and is actually accurate, I'm going to be pretty impressed with the show and how they handle that. So like I said, I think for as much as Walter considered Cabe a father figure, Cabe, after losing his daughter, considered Walter like his second chance at having a kid. And so the betrayal and the situation with Baghdad really hit him in a way that we weren't necessarily privy to in the pilot episode or quite yet. But I think that's going to come to light, and we're going to see that Cabe, there's more to Cabe than we're seeing right now. So let's talk about Toby in this episode. And Toby, again, works with Walter to investigate Paige's ex-husband. And so he finds out that he's a little bit aggressive, and he does all this sort of psychological stuff to evaluate Ralph's father. And to see that protective side of Toby, not only that, but that he was willing to work with Walter so closely, and to do the things for Walter to make sure that Paige didn't implicate Walter in that, to kind of work as Walter's right hand. I think we're going to see more of that, just not necessarily in this context, but in an overall context, having Toby be that right hand for Walter and doing the things that he can't necessarily get done. And the big thing for Toby in this episode was that he was getting closer to and helping Happy in this episode with her father. He talks about in the episode how he had looked into Happy's situation and how he had a copy or a folder of the child services folder for Happy, and how he had talked about how her father had put in photos. And so to me, you don't do that for somebody unless you really care for them on a serious level. So I'm glad we're seeing more of that relationship develop. And again, at what point are they just going to drop all this back and forth and just try to have a relationship is going to be something to look out for. And what repercussions that has on the team is something to look out for. But again, Toby did a real solid for Happy in this episode. And it shows that he cares deeply for her, probably more than he cares about anybody else on the team. So I was happy to see that from Toby, and to see that he maybe is starting to move past his ex-wife, and maybe is starting to say, you know what, I'm really trying my best to care about Happy, and I care about you, and I want to help you, and this is why I did that. So just that's kind of Toby in this episode is for the most part developing more of that Toby Happy storyline, and that was nice to see that. So Sylvester in this episode sort of rounds out the trifecta of Walter, Toby, and Sylvester, in that they were all three of them sort of working to investigate Ralph's father and protect Ralph. And so let's talk about Sylvester this episode. And the main thing with Sylvester is, again, his father sort of put him off to right field in baseball, and you get the impression that his father didn't really care too much about him, and his father sort of dismissed him almost. And so seeing a little bit of that sort of backstory for Sylvester kind of goes into what sort of shaped him and why he's the way that he is. And the main thing with Sylvester in this episode is his continued confidence. And he's been working with Paige in a couple episodes now where Paige has been able to bring out a very confident and a very capable Sylvester. They have that scene where Sylvester sort of throws that accelerant through the window, and he's coached pretty much by Paige and encouraged by Paige. And the two of them are working really well together in bringing out the confidence in Sylvester that he's going to need to contribute to the team. And so I think that's going to be his main thing for this season, is continuing to be confident and confident and confident, and eventually maybe getting past that exceptional amount of EQ that he apparently has, and learning to function a little bit better and be more assertive and be more effective. And Paige is going to be the main thing that does that for him, because she's that mother figure, and she's, like I said, encouraging him. And so to see how that shakes out is going to be interesting, and what he does in return is going to be interesting. So let's talk about Paige. Like I said, Paige deals with Ralph's father coming back and sort of tells the team to leave it be, and we see that there's a lot going on there in terms of that relationship between Paige's ex-husband and herself. And the thing that struck me about Paige this episode was that she is really struggling to balance her personal life now with her professional life, and trying to keep those two things separate. She understands how good this is for Ralph to be around people that are like him, but again, she's struggling with keeping that balanced and saying, this is the team, and this is what we do for Ralph and the work and stuff like that. But there are things in my life that are personal and emotional and stuff that the team might not necessarily know how to handle, and that she would know how to handle, or she thinks she knows how to handle. And so to see that sort of balance was interesting in this episode, and to see that she is proud of Ralph and understands that Ralph is doing his best, and that Ralph is growing and learning in his own way. And she has that conversation with her ex-husband about Ralph's abilities, and Ralph's father says that he had, I think the line that he said was learning challenges or developmental challenges. And you get the impression that he sort of, again, as with Walter's father and Sylvester's father and Happy's father, he doesn't understand what's going on with Ralph the way that she does and the way that the team does. And so to see her sort of become defensive and shelter Ralph from that and be proud of Ralph was impressive. And she wrestles with telling Ralph anything about his father. We get the impression that for the 7 or 8 years that Ralph hasn't seen his father, she hasn't mentioned him at all or brought him up at all. And so she finally tells him, what do you think about your dad? What do you remember about your dad? And he remembers quite a bit about his father for somebody that was, I think, a baby when his father left. And so to see, again, more from Ralph and Paige, like I was talking about my other reviews, I wanted to see more from Ralph and Paige and see them develop that relationship and develop those characters. So that was a big point in this episode's favor. And let's round off my characters discussion with Happy. And Happy, like I said, got that information from Toby and got that whole file from Toby about her father. And then at the end of the episode, she goes and talks to a mechanic who, they don't say it out loud, but that's pretty much her father, right? I mean, that was the impression that I got, was that that was her father, and she was going to talk with him and size him up. And so they worked together on that car at the end of the episode. And I was actually most entertained and most impressed with Happy in this episode, because she really pulled at your heartstrings with that whole thing with her father sort of abandoning her. And then at the end of the episode, she goes and sizes him up. That was really emotionally satisfying to see that. And to see that she's, again, like I said earlier, tearing those walls down and learning to move forward and become a little bit more open. She shreds the file at the beginning of the episode and then turns around and you can see she shows the picture or whatever that she put back together. And so we're seeing that she really, for all of her bravado and the fact that she has that whole antisocial thing, she really cares about a lot of things, and she has a very emotional side. And that was satisfying to watch. That was probably my favorite part of the episode, was that whole storyline with Happy and how she's opening up and moving forward and maturing in an emotional way. So that sort of covers the whole character aspect of the episode. My overall thoughts on the episode, I was glad that, number one, we got the impression, again, that not all these geniuses are as happy and as friendly as the team. Again, with Mark Collins and now this guy, these are two geniuses, or borderline geniuses in this other guy's case, that are using their intellect in a sort of villainous way. And so again, I'm glad that we got to see from the show that not all these geniuses are model citizens. I'm glad again that we saw that Ralph and Paige are getting more story time and more screen time, because that's sort of the human aspect of the team and the human side of the team. And to see not only the core group of geniuses sort of do their thing, but to see that Paige and Ralph are having their own sort of struggles is an important balance that the show has to strike, and I think they're doing well with that so far. So that's kind of my thoughts on the episode. Overall, really great episode. Again, I'm glad that we saw that the team and Paige and all that are getting an equal amount of screen time and an equal amount of story time. And I'm glad that we saw that the geniuses are not necessarily all model citizens. And again, my theory coming out of this episode, it sort of dawned on me that Cabe Cabe considered Walter his second chance at fatherhood, and to me that's an important thread into understanding that relationship and what went wrong. And so to see more of that develop, and maybe to see a flashback of Cabe and his daughter moving forward, would be nice to have. But with that said, that kind of covers my review. So if you enjoyed this review, leave a like, leave a thumbs up, so that I know I'm headed in the right direction here. If you have anything you want to add or talk about, you can do that in the comment section down below, or you can talk to me at the DH Reviews on Twitter. I talk about a lot of the episodes and stuff like that when I get a chance to. If you want to see more reviews like this, subscribe to the channel and you'll see more reviews like this as they come out. Mondays will be Constantine. Tuesdays will be Gotham, pardon me. Wednesdays will be Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. whenever Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. decides to put an episode out. Thursdays are Scorpion. And then we're going to have more shows coming up pretty soon here to talk about, to review. So with that said, again, subscribe and share this video, share these videos on Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter. Get the channel out there so I can continue to do the things that I really enjoy, like the live streams and stuff. More of that coming up. And with that being said, I've been Dharma Helper, and this is DH Reviews. So have a good weekend, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for support this week and leading up to this week. And I will see you in the next video.